Right now, governments are pouring historic funding into workforce education, yet local wages stagnate and critical sectors face severe labor shortages. The disconnect stems from the architecture of the system itself. For decades, the system has relied on a legacy framework known as enrollment-based funding, often calculated through full-time equivalents, or FTEs. Under this logic, an institution's primary financial reward is triggered the moment a student enrolls. The money flows at intake. This diagram shows public capital fracturing. Paying for intake expands administrative overhead, leaving only a trickle for verified outcomes. To hit recruitment targets, institutions lower entry standards and push low-value certificates, driving credential inflation. Once funded, the incentive to ensure student completion drops to zero. The institution captures the reward up front, while the risk of failure is externalized. The student is left with debt. The taxpayer absorbs the cost of lost productivity and loan defaults. The legacy cost-plus system subsidizes institutional preservation over the successful entry of students into the economy. The mathematical solution to this hazard is an architecture called outcome-based reimbursement, or OBR. In an OBR framework, a training provider is only made whole financially when a student achieves a verified high-value economic milestone. This equation illustrates the mechanics of an authentic OBR system. Instead of flat intake fees, reimbursement is calculated through specific performance variables. The base variables require proof of success: verified completion, verified licensure, and verified placement in a high-wage job. The formula also accounts for long-term local economic impact, specifically tracking 12-month job retention and new business creation. A common criticism of results-based models is creaming, the concern that institutions will only recruit the easiest-to-place candidates and ignore populations that require more support. The weight variables, marked here as W, are designed to neutralize that exact risk. Policymakers can adjust these multipliers based on the student's demographic profile. By assigning a difficulty premium, the state provides a significantly higher financial reimbursement to an institution that successfully trains and places individuals from second-chance or underserved populations. Hard-coding economic milestones and demographic priorities directly into the reimbursement formula aligns the financial survival of the institution with the targeted success of the individual. Historically, the roadblock to implementing OBR has been the sheer cost of monitoring these long-term outcomes. Traditional oversight relies on retrospective audits and manual, paper-based compliance workflows. This manual tracking is a primary driver of administrative bloat. Over the last few years, the number of business and finance roles in higher education has expanded disproportionately. This bureaucratic middle consumes capital that should go toward instructional staff and modern equipment. To eliminate this bloat, the system requires an AI-native compliance layer. This topology diagram displays a multi-agent validation model. First, the identity agent verifies the user against biometric and government data, instantly eliminating ghost enrollments. Next, the competency agent validates that the student's work and exam performance meet the required standard. The audit agent continuously scans real-time attendance and reimbursement claims to detect statistical anomalies. Finally, the employment agent cross-links directly with state tax and wage records. This irrevocably verifies that the job placement and retention actually occurred, permanently locking the record. Early models of this AI architecture show severe drops in overhead, reducing enrollment processing costs by 90% and data reporting costs by 99%. Artificial intelligence here acts as the structural compliance layer. It makes monitoring an outcome-based economy fiscally viable and highly resistant to fraud. Once compliance is automated and payment is tied to outcomes, public grants no longer need to subsidize the daily operating expenses of individual institutions. Funding can then shift to an infrastructure-first framework. This side-by-side comparison maps the difference. On the left, the legacy model spends government funds on redundant, high-overhead facilities for separate operators. On the right, the shared-use infrastructure model pools that capital to build a single, state-of-the-art center of excellence. In this model, the state owns the physical labs and the AI tech stack. Multiple education providers then lease time in these optimized spaces to train their students. This creates a system of competitive neutrality. By measuring success through the same results per dollar ratio, the focus shifts from a provider's tax status to their ability to deliver a licensed practitioner. Providers are granted access to these shared facilities based strictly on their historical outcome yield, the measure of their past success in graduating and placing students. When public capital builds the physical and digital assets, providers are pushed to lower overhead and concentrate resources on the quality of instruction. Attempting an overnight transition to this model would severely disrupt the existing workforce ecosystem. Instead, the transition requires a structured 60-month phased implementation roadmap. Phase 1, covering the first 12 months, mandates retrospective human value audits on past spending to identify waste, alongside the initial construction of the API data stack. Phase 2 spans months 13 through 24. This period launches outcome-based pilot programs in critical sectors and imposes hard caps on administrative overhead for any institution receiving grant funds. Phase 3 initiates the full structural reform. By month 60, enrollment metrics are completely decoupled from payment triggers, and all participating institutions are required to use AI-native compliance systems. Enforcing this transition requires a specific legislative mechanism, the Workforce Results Act. This diagram shows the primary enforcement tool of the Act, the performance-based contract. Exactly 50% of a grant award is distributed upfront to cover baseline training costs. The remaining 50% is locked, only released when state tax records verify the student has been retained for 12 months. Withholding half the award until retention is proven mathematically eliminates the profitability of enrollment mills. Aggressively auditing past expenditures, automating current bureaucratic processes, and financially demanding verified retention ensures that public capital builds a workforce capable of meeting local labor demand.